Hello friends and welcome to this week's video. We're going to be strictly reading big books. This isn't a challenge video or anything. Most likely I'm not going to be able to be finishing any of these books in a short span of time. Today is the very end of May, it is almost June, and I figured I would get started. I also don't have a planned out TBR. I have a couple books on the list that I want to read. I am open to the TBR growing and changing depending on how it's going. So one of the books for sure on my TBR is It. I've wanted to read it for a long time. I feel like it's I don't know if I could go as far as to say classic, but it's definitely an iconic book and story that a lot of people think of when they think of Stephen King, and it's huge. I didn't know exactly what I felt like reading, but I decided on Crime and Punishment. So this book looks a lot smaller than the other books, but it is over 500 pages. It is 650 pages roughly, so definitely still qualifies. It's also a Penguin Classic edition. The only reason I mention that is because the Penguin Classic book pages are a lot thinner than maybe your average book. We are judging books based on size in this video, okay? Size matters for this video. So I've already started Crime and Punishment, and let me tell you, I am so pleasantly surprised with how this is going. 30% of the way through, so I feel like I'm a good chunk of the way in where I can make a decent assessment and officially say that I am enjoying this. Because sometimes you just start a book and you don't know what the vibes are yet, especially when it comes to a classic. At least for me, I have a lot of caution going into classics. I've never read from Fyodor Dostoevsky before, but I've heard about him. Not gonna lie, I'm a little intimidated by it and was mentally prepared for it to be kind of difficult to read, difficult to understand, low, and kind of like heavy, but I am so pleasantly surprised. I am enjoying it so much, and it's really easy to understand, and it's interesting. If I could compare it to something that might pique your interest, strangely enough, if you like true crime, I think you would like this. This is kind of right up that alley. It is about a young man who is a poor student, and he's very prideful and very arrogant, and sees himself as above everybody, even though he's poor himself and kind of disheveled and not taking care of himself. He's very, very arrogant, and he isolates himself from people. And one day he just decides to murder someone. And because of his pride and his perceptions on the world and morality and everything, he is justifying to himself that he has the right to murder this person and that he has to, that the world is leading him to commit this murder. And so the book is broken up into parts. There are 6 parts and an epilogue. I'm almost done with part 2. The end of part 1 is the build up and him committing the murder, and now I am almost done with part 2, and it's the immediate aftermath, and he's really worked himself up into a frenzy. He's ill, he's blacking out, he's freaking out. Everyone who's speaking to him, he's thinking, they know what I've done, and that's where I am now. And to be honest, I'm just having a really good time with it. Marking it up and doing like sticky notes and highlighting, breaking out the tabs. I love this kind of stuff. So just really getting into the text and really working my way through it. So starting off the video really strong with Crime and Punishment. Who would have guessed? Not me. I would not have guessed that. I don't know where this is gonna go from here, but starting off on a high note. I figured now would be a good time to give a little update because I'm about 50% of the way through Crime and Punishment, and I'm really enjoying this book. About halfway through, still no one knows he's committed the crime, but there are definitely people that are suspecting him, and definitely he's acting very suspicious, crashing out at a lot of points, just on edge. And then like some side plots that are happening are his sister was engaged to this like really rich guy who literally said he wanted to marry a poor girl, that way she would worship him and be a good wife life to him. And it's just like basically everyone hated this guy. And because of several encounters where everyone's like hating this dude, she's broken off that engagement. And I'm calling the main guy Rodya because that's what his mom calls him. All of the names are really long and Russian, so I'm gonna call the main guy Rodya. Rodya's friend, who I'm gonna call Raz, is basically the opposite of Rodya. He's very moral and honest and good, and if everyone likes him, I like him, and he's starting to have a crush on the sister, whose name is Dunya. And so really rooting for them to get together. I'm having such a good time. Like, you can see all my tabs, highlights, sticky notes, all of it. I will say a lot of classics can be hard to read because of language, because of pacing. And another thing that could be difficult when reading classics is just the pure density. And this book's no exception. So very long chapters. Okay, so the book's broken up into multiple parts, and the multiple parts are like over 100 pages, and there's only like 5 chapters in each part. So very long chapters, which can be very fatiguing to read, and not a lot of breaks in the page. So there are very long monologues, very long paragraphs where people are just continually talking. Like, look at this page. There's like no breaks. There's no paragraph separation or anything. And it's a lot of talking, or a lot of internal monologues or external monologues, just very long chunks, just the page before. Just no breaks, which can make it very fatiguing to read for your eyes and your mind. There was this long monologue that Rodya did because apparently he wrote an article a couple months before he committed this crime called On Crime, and basically he was arguing that there are certain classes of people that are basically exempt from general morality or general law. They can get away with murder because they are a superior type of person. They're extraordinary people that if they see fit to murder or to cheat or whatever, that they have the right to do that. And then the other people are just designed and made to obey laws and to follow laws. And that's his whole argument. He's talking about it because this guy who's definitely onto his case, definitely is suspicious of him and is investigating him, is like, yeah, you know, I was doing some research and I came across this article that you wrote. Can you like expand on your thoughts on that? Because it's like, these are this dude's beliefs, and I think he followed through on those beliefs and committed murder. And so it's just this long monologue of him going off about these crazy beliefs. Needless to say, I'm loving it. I'll probably come back when I'm done because this book is huge and I have other big books to get to in this video. But yeah, I will see you then. Hello, my friends. So, I've finished Crime and Punishment. And it's so exciting to get to come here and tell you that I loved it. I gave it a 5-star. I would put this on my list to read again. I feel like Crime and Punishment is one of those things that gets brought up a lot. Like, it's always on that list of like, you need to read. And that's great and all, but it feels truly like an accomplishment because I really enjoyed it. You know, it's one thing to read or watch something that's like really hyped up, and then if you're sitting there like, I didn't like it, or I didn't get it, or I don't understand the hype around it. So it truly feels like an accomplishment, and just really enjoyed this story. This whole book is leading up to his confession. The whole book is the psychology of crime and the different kinds of punishments one faces when they commit crime. The whole book is him getting to a breaking point where he has to confess for himself, because it's just this compulsion that he has to confess that you could say that a lot of people have, right? We don't lie naturally or easily, right? There's all these like tests and studies done, like that's what a polygraph is. It's your bodies and your mind is not designed to lie, so when you do, it's against your nature. He has his compulsion to confess, but it's being fought against his instincts for self-preservation, right? Like, he doesn't want to be caught. He doesn't want to go to jail or face legal punishment for what he's done. And he doesn't want people to look poorly on him, especially because he's dealing with this ego and pride. He genuinely thinks that he's superior to most people, and it really leads to the degradation of his mind because he's suffering throughout this whole book. He's on edge, he's getting physically ill, and he's losing it. And many, many times is he this close to confessing to just anybody or everybody he's with, but then he doesn't. And so the whole book is just his suffering because of what he's done. And I really enjoyed it. And you might think like this whole 600-page book just building up to his confession is a lot, but I think it was done really well, and I felt the suspense. There was a lot of subplots, stuff going on with other characters that added to it. We aren't just in his head the whole time. We are seeing it from his sister's perspective. I am so excited that this is how this video started off, and can only hope that it would continue to be this successful. Yeah, that's all I think I really wanted to say about Crime and Punishment. I will see you when it's time to pick up the next large book. It is time to start the next massive book on this TBR, and I've picked it. This book is huge. This book is, oh my word, 1,153 pages. Let's get started. So I am about 40% of the way through, which is a lot. It's a big book, but honestly, I'm really, really liking it. I'm super impressed. I've read some Stephen King, not a lot. I've read 2 full Stephen King stories, and then I did read the You Like It Darker, which is a short story collection from Stephen King. So I've read some Stephen King before, and I've enjoyed Stephen King, but I'm really impressed with this. I think the storytelling is really good. I'm 40% of the way through, which is a really big chunk, but all that is happening is really setting up the backstory. So we're flip-flopping between present day when all of the kids are adults and when they were all kids when they all first met and when they came together, when all of the stuff with the clown initially started happening to them. And the way it flips back and forth is done really seamlessly and really well. I'm really enjoying the flip-flopping because I feel like sometimes jumping time period can be hard and it's not always done well, but I really feel like the flip-flopping is really painting the picture really well. I think because it's such a big story, it's making it interesting because we're getting a little taste from them being kids and them being adults, and we're really putting puzzle pieces together for who each of the characters are and putting together the timeline of what happened and why Pennywise is so scary. The character building is incredible because of how much time we have to build the characters. I love each of them. The kids are so precious. Probably Michael and Ben are my favorites, but like they all are so endearing and you like them so much, and the way they all come together and become friends is so wholesome, and it just really sets you up for caring about the characters. And I feel like something like that is not impossible in a smaller book, but like we have literally 1,400 pages to build up these characters, and I just appreciate it so much. I love a good background, a good character build, and you just are really getting that. So there's, let me see if I can do this. There's Ben, there's Bill, there's Richie, there's Stanley. Did I say Ben? There's Eddie. Ben, Bill, Eddie, Richie, Stanley, Michael, and then Beverly, who's the only girl. And so I'm at the point now where we've heard all of their individual one-on-one encounters with Pennywise, except for Richie, but he has encountered Pennywise with Ben, I think. And the group is all together except for Michael. Michael hasn't joined their group yet. So that's what's happening in the past when they were kids. When we jump forward in time to them being adults, they've all just received their phone call because whatever happened in the past when they were kids, they all made a promise to each other that if and when this happens again, when the clown resurfaces, I guess, that they would come back to Derry to deal with it. They are all getting a phone call from Michael, who hasn't joined the group back in the past yet, but Michael stayed in Derry, and I guess it's happening again, and so he made a call to everyone, and everyone is basically dropping everything that they were doing. You know, some of them were married, have jobs, you know, they're doing normal adult stuff. They've got their lives now, but they get this phone call from Mike, and they all just drop what they're doing and are making their way back to Derry. So it's really interesting. I'm really enjoying the flip-flopping timeline. And the encounters with Pennywise are so scary. They're so intense. So Pennywise basically can like take the form of whatever you're afraid of. So the kids have all encountered Pennywise, but they've all had seen different things. So Eddie saw this werewolf from a horror movie that he had seen the previous night before that scared him. Whereas another one saw him in the form of like a mummy, or Bill, he sees him in the form of Georgie, which at the very beginning of the story opens up with Bill and his younger brother when they were kids, who was like a little boy, and Pennywise kills Georgie, and Bill is kind of haunted by the loss of his brother. And so Pennywise manifests as Georgie to Bill, which is just horrible. And so they all see Pennywise differently. And I'm really excited that I'm only 400 pages in and I have so much left to go. It's actually been a while since I read Crime and Punishment. I read a handful of things between the first book in this video and this one. So I'm actually really excited to be like deep diving into this massive story. Like I said, I've only read a couple of his. I'm always a little caught off guard by how gory or vulgar or explicit it is. Like, it always catches me off guard, and that's part of what makes it so scary and almost like realistic, because of the way he describes things, and you're just like really there, you know? And the shock value, right? Every scene with Pennywise, I'm terrified. I'm like, this is scary. Yeah, I'm just really, really liking this. And I'm glad that I decided to pick this up because it's good. It's really good. I will talk to you later. Hello. So it's long past due for me to update you on it. Very far in. I am just reached the 900 page mark and part 5. It's going very well. I am really enjoying this a lot. So at this point, I just continue to be impressed with the flip-flopping timeline, because it's like we're getting 2 stories at once in a way, but it's done really well. So at this point in the present, when they're adults, they're all back in Derry. And it turns out that summer when they originally encountered it and had dealt with it when they were children, once they all grew up and left Derry and moved on, they all basically forgot what happened. Except for Mike. Mike is the only one who stayed in Derry into his adulthood, so he still remembers everything. But everyone else kind of forgot it. But since they've come back to Derry, their memories are coming back to them. We finally read the story about how Mike joined the group. When the original group is forming, Mike is not in it for a long time. And I also wasn't expecting the potential problem of Beverly's husband and Bill's wife coming to Derry. And I think a lot of them are assuming that they're not going to come back from this Derry trip, but we had a scene where the husband figures out where she went and is like on his way to her. So like that's going to be a potential problem, and the same for Bill's wife. And so I imagine that that's going to have some sort of conflict with the husband and wives coming and potentially intervening on this fight with Pennywise that I'm imagining is going to happen. And just continually throughout with the flip-flopping, we're getting so much backstory on every character. We're really getting to know each character that just make you so attached to each of them. And I'm enjoying it a lot. And it's making me weirdly nostalgic for a childhood that I never had. Like, not that I want to encounter a killer clown, but just like the extra stuff, them hanging out, them riding their bikes and playing in the woods, taking away all the horrifying parts. It's like weirdly in a way comforting with the nostalgic of the childhood, but then you just get gut punched with these horrific scenes with Pennywise, or just some of the scenes with their bullies are horrible, and there's some really crazy characters outside of Pennywise, you know, because sometimes people are just scary themselves. And so I've just reached the part where they have their first intentional fight with Pennywise when they were kids. So I'm realizing that we're gonna get 2 Pennywise fight scenes. They're realizing that Pennywise is actually scared of them. And I think the whole idea is that they are able to kind of beat Pennywise because of their friendship, because they have such a good bond with each other that they can kind of overcome the fear that they have of Pennywise. Like, I think what gives Pennywise his strength is kids being afraid of him. And so, like, throughout them trying to kill Pennywise, there are moments of them almost laughing or finding humor in things, and moments of them really having each other's backs, and that love and humor and bond that they have is a threat to Pennywise. Because they believe that they together can take out Pennywise, that makes Pennywise weaker. And so they're realizing that Pennywise is scared of them. That doesn't make Pennywise any less terrifying, and that doesn't make them any less scared, but it does give them encouragement and more bravery to take him on, I think. So I'll talk to you when I finish it. Hello. So I finished it. And one thing at a time, I really liked this book, okay? I think that both the flashbacks and the present day are really strong stories that just make each other better. I didn't find myself wishing to go back to when they were kids, when we were talking about when they were adults. Not only does it make the characters more believable and more relatable, but I think also because they are children, you fall in love with them even more, just because there are these precious children that are just living their life, and these horrible things are happening. Unbelievable, scary things are happening that the adults cannot see. The adults do not know what's going on, and it's just a group of them that come together and are deep down genuinely just good children that are just wanting to be children, and it just makes you want to like give them a hug and protect each of them because of this horrible stuff that they're going through. So I think that's partially why you love every single one of them. Each of their characters gets so much screen time, if you will, so we get to know each of the characters so much, and so I really loved that aspect of this book. I think Pennywise is such an interesting monster. We learned a lot more about Pennywise than I thought we were going to, because he could have easily just had it be this scary, shape-shifting monster that only appears to children and eats children. And it really could have been left at that vagueness, and the story would still be good. We actually get a lot of information on Pennywise, and that he's like actually this really old beast that's been around for a very, very long time. What I find weird is that he's like omniscient. He knows things about the kids that I don't know if he's like reading their minds or if he's just omniscient. I don't know what that deal is. I thought he was strangely super powerful. One thing I didn't expect was the influence that Pennywise has over adults. So Pennywise can only like appear to children and only goes after children. However, he can influence and manipulate people and adults. I thought it was also interesting interesting how we get a lot of information on their childhood bullies. So Henry Bowers and like 2 or 3 other boys, we also get scenes with them, and it just really shows how prolific and horrible Pennywise is and how much damage he does. And Pennywise is like simultaneously the most terrifying creature but also super goofy. Stephen King, I guess, does a good job at capturing a horrifying, terrible monster and wrapping that up in a goofy clown. Not funny at all, but it's just like a weird mixture of like absolute horror clown presenting. So as we get closer and closer to the end of the book, the flip-flopping kind of like starts to convene. So we're getting basically 2 climaxes at the same time. We're reading the climax of the kids fighting Pennywise, and then we're flip-flopping to when they're adults and they're fighting Pennywise again. So it's incredibly done that we're getting 2 climaxes at the same time, and they're both just adding to each other. And I thought that was really good, really cool. Ben's probably my favorite character, and honestly, towards the end, Richie was one of my favorite characters as well. Some of his one-liners, I was like, okay, Richie's actually funny. I like Richie a lot. However, I hate that this is a thing. I hate that this is something I have to talk about, but I have to. I cannot review this book and leave this out. So overall, I thought this was incredible. However, there is one thing, literally one scene in this book that is so bad, and I hate it so much. I wish it was just like a little thing that I could overlook, but it's not a little thing. It's a really big thing, and I had no idea. I'd never heard this before. I did not know this was coming, and it's making me feel weird about loving this book. And it sucks because it's just one thing, but that one thing is really bad. I really don't know how to go about this because I wouldn't say, oh my goodness, it's so not worth reading because of this horrible scene. But the scene is really bad. And, you know, it's like one of Stephen King's most famous books. So I feel weird that I didn't know. This was like, why is nobody talking about this? I don't know. But so Stephen King's writing is very explicit and very vulgar at some points. You know, I could understand being grossed out by some of the sexual things in this book. And I understand. I don't really like overly sexual descriptions or commentary or scenes. I don't really like that either. However, in certain contexts, I can understand how it adds to the story because it does add to character development and understanding, because some of that sexual stuff is trauma-based, and so it adds to the dimension of the characters and adds to the scariness in some scenes, you know, depending on what we're talking about and the scenes. Sometimes it makes it scarier, in my opinion. I can get with a lot of weirdness, and I understand going there for horror, so I can look past that in a way or understand that in a way. However, after the climax when they were kids and they beat Pennywise for the first time, throughout this whole book, there's been sort of like a lot of intuition going on. Like the kids are like, oh, this is what we're supposed to do. They're like getting these visions or impressions that it's like, oh, this is the way things are supposed to be. All of these kids were supposed to meet and come together, and they were supposed to do it this way. So they've been getting these intuitions throughout the whole book, and I think that's fine. Cool. It's somewhat magical. There's a higher being power working here, and I'm cool with that. That's fine. However, when they beat Pennywise when they're kids, Beverly gets one of these like intuitions, gets one of these feelings, oh, this is what we're supposed to do now. And for some reason she's like, okay, to seal this bond, to seal what we've done here, to finish this, I need to sleep with all of you. And they're children. It was horrible and so unnecessary. You just take that whole thing out. Perfect book. So that's what I mean by all over incredible, amazing. However, that one thing, which is a big thing, unfortunately. Because I was reading this book from a good chunk of the way in, I was thinking this is for sure 5 stars. I'm having such a good time. And I did have a really good time. And I still want to give it 5 stars. But that scene is such a big deal, and I'm so confused. It started happening and I was like, what are we doing? We just took a hard left turn. What's happening? I cannot read this. So that's unfortunate, to put it lightly. And yeah, I think we should just leave it there because that's all I gotta say. I'm impressed and horrified. So I'll see you when it's time to read the next book. Oh, also I wanted to say that I think I'm going to try and make my husband watch the movie with me tonight. I know there's an older one and then a newer one. I don't know which one we're going to watch, but I think I might make my husband watch it with me tonight. Hello, it is time to start the third book of this video, and that book is Don Quixote. So Don Quixote wasn't really on my radar, but I was watching a video of somebody reviewing some books they had recently read, and she said the one sentence that got me to buy this book almost immediately, and that was that if you like the Three Musketeers, you would like Don Quixote. So that's all I really needed to hear, but let me tell you what it's about. Don Quixote has become so entranced by reading chivalric romances that he's determined to become a knight-errant himself. In the company of his faithful squire, his exploits blossom in all sorts of wonderful ways. While Quixote's fancy often leads him astray, they roam the world together. Its experimental form and literary playfulness, Don Quixote has been generally recognized as the first modern novel. That's cool. This book has been enormously influential in a host of writers from Fielding to Sterne to Flaubert, Dickens, Melville, and Faulkner, who reread it once a year. I'm not crazy for reading the Three Musketeers every year. Other people do it. Also, Fyodor Dostoevsky apparently said that this book was profound and powerful, the final and greatest utterance of the human mind. Which is interesting that he said that about this book, and also I read Crime and Punishment in this video. So we're coming full circle, I guess. I don't know. I'm excited to get into it. I'm feeling in the mood for this book, which is 982 pages. Without further ado, let's get into Don Quixote. Hey, so I am 350 pages into Don Quixote, and unfortunately I'm not having the same experience that I had with Crime and Punishment and with it. Those books was pretty much immediate, I'm having a good time. This book is weird. So basically, Don Quixote is a man. If he was a modern day person, he is the type of person who's only reading romance fantasy books. So he's only reading these books on knights and chivalry and romances, and he decides, I want to live in those books. I want to live like that. And he just goes out and gets himself knighted somehow. I mean, not really, but he knights himself and finds a man in his town, and he's like, you're my servant. His name is Sancho, and he's like, okay, you are gonna come with me on my adventures, and he, for some reason, agrees to it and promises him that, oh, I'm a knight, so I'm going to save a princess someday and become a king, and then I'll give you an island to yourself, promising Sancho land and money and all that stuff. So they're going on these adventures, which is literally just them roaming around, just causing trouble and getting beat up. So Don Quixote is actually delusional. He doesn't live in reality. He's coming from a place of trying to help. You know, the whole idea is he's bringing back chivalry. So his heart's in a good place and he's trying to help, but all he's doing is causing chaos and hurt and freaking people out. And all that's really happened is they're getting beat up every chapter, because he'll do something or say something that's not based in reality, and then somebody will get upset or feel threatened by him, and then they get beat up. And that's all it's been. I mean, I'm 350 pages in, and I'm still wondering if there's an overarching plot, or is it just Don Quixote and Sancho wandering around creating chaos? Because that's all it feels like. There's a lot of random storytelling. I just finished this book that one of them was reading about this husband and wife, and it was just like a really long chunk of time of of reading a story within the story. And I'm holding off to see if that has any ties to something else in the book, or if we're just getting a lot of stories within the story that seem pretty unrelated. So I can't say that I'm enjoying it that much. I'm finding it hard to follow. It's not going great, but it's not going horrible. When things don't go his way, because they never do, because he's not perceiving reality, he just explains it away by, oh, there was an enchantment on it. So they stay at these inns and he's thinking they're in castles. And whenever something goes wrong, he's like, oh my goodness, a giant just hurt me. Or I just got enchanted. Like, he attacked this poor barber who had his basin on his head because it was raining. And he was like, that is a knight's helmet and I want it, and he's enchanted it to look like a basin, but it's actually a knight's helmet. So he attacks this dude to get his helmet, and it's just craziness. Everything is getting written off by it being an enchantment, and they're getting beat up so much. It's like, oh, the solution to everything is it's an enchantment and we're getting beat up, and that is what it is. The recommendation of this based off of the Three Musketeers, I understand where it's coming from, but I disagree. It is humorous. The Three Musketeers does have elements of humor. And while the characters in the Three Musketeers could be deemed as dramatic and intense, like Don Quixote, at least what they were doing was based in reality. What he's doing is completely senseless and not based on anything real. Yeah, that's how it's going. So I'll talk to you later. I am 730 pages in. And I'm trying. I really am. I'm trying. I'm now like thoroughly into part 2 because it's broken up into 2 parts. And I do think part 2 is a bit more entertaining than part 1, and it flows a bit better. So it makes it easier to understand and like follow. In part 2, Don Quixote seems a bit more mild and like a bit wiser and a bit calmer. I still feel like random things are happening, like they attend a wedding for like random people that they come across. In part 2, there's less drawn out storytelling, at least so far. And another thing this book does that can be good and can be entertaining, this book does, is like break the fourth wall. So occasionally the author will be like, this part the translation isn't clear, or this part is known to be false. You know, it's just like calling the authenticity into question, and where it's like unreliable sort of thing. And there's people in the book that are basically making fun of Don Quixote. They realize that he's delusional and gullible, and they take advantage of him just for their own entertainment. And now I'm at a part where a duke and a duchess have come across Don Quixote, who, this is another kind of breaking the fourth wall moment. The duke and the duchess in the story have read the first part of this book, which I think is funny. They're like, oh, you're Don Quixote from that story. We know who you are. And they let Don Quixote and Sancho come to their home and stay with them purely just for their own entertainment. They are pretending that, you know, they like what he's doing and that, oh, we are chivalrous too, like we respect you being a knight, you know, we want to support you and everything. But really all they're doing is laughing at him and humiliating him and Sancho, his squire, because Sancho's a weird character because he sometimes is level-headed, clear-minded, like, yeah, Don Quixote's crazy and like I need to rein him in. But other times he's fully in the fantasy. And so with the Duke and the Duchess, Sancho's feeling a little they're feeding his ego a little bit, and so he's kind of falling into the fantasy of him being the squire of a knight. Weirdly enough, I feel for him, right? Because like he's a good guy at heart and he's just trying to help. He really is. And so these people are just clearly laughing at him. It's like, what the heck, you know? It's not cool. The main motivating factor for Don Quixote right now is he believes his true love, the woman he fights for, who he's never actually met and is not an actual character in this book, he believes she's under an enchantment and he's trying to undo her enchantment and save her, basically. And like the Duke and Duchess are coming up with all these stories about like, oh, Sancho, you need to whip yourself 3,300 times to undo Dulcinea's enchantment, and they just find it hilarious. So that's what's going on in this book now. We're almost done. We have, a lot more to go, but we're almost done. I'll come back to you when I finish. We'll wrap it up, and we'll move on. Hello, and I've finished it. And I think the second part was definitely way better than the first. It's just crazy that it takes you 400, almost 500 pages to get to a story that feels like a story. So the second part is a lot less ridiculous. The things that are happening are still wild, and there's still a lot of fake things happening. It's not necessarily Don Quixote's fantasies, it's everyone around him is playing into it to make fun of him and humiliate him. So like these crazy weird things are happening, but it's not all in Don Quixote's imagination, because these people are actually trying to trick him and egg him on, basically. It's a really actually sad second part of the book, because pretty much everything that's happening is just to mess with them. And both Don Quixote and Sancho are two honest and good men that they don't really recognize it. So a large chunk of the second part, they're staying with the Duke and Duchess, and they're just constantly mocking them and laughing at them. And they make Sancho a governor of this island, which is what he really wanted, but obviously it's all fake, and it's just a bunch of people putting on this performance to make Sancho feel like he's the governor. But like he actually does like a really good job, and they throw a bunch of these crazy scenarios at him that his people are bringing to him to fix, and he actually does a surprisingly good job. But then the Duke and the Duchess send an army, a fake army, to Sancho's land, and he's like, oh, you guys are under attack, and Sancho gets overwhelmed, and he's like, I'm not doing this anymore, and he leaves because he gets beat up again, because the Duke and the Duchess find it entertaining to actually hurt Sancho. They eventually leave the Duke and the Duchess, and I'm like, good, get the heck away from them. But the Duke and the Duchess actually go out of their way to bring Sancho and Don Quixote back, just because they haven't had enough fun yet messing with them. And it's really sad. Close to the end, a character from the beginning of the book comes back disguised as a knight to sort of put a stop to Don Quixote. He's like, I'm going to challenge you to a battle, and if I win, you have to go home and stop being a knight for a whole year. Like, you can't put on your armor, you can't fight, you can't duel people for a whole year, basically to try and get him to stop and go away. And Don Quixote loses the battle, and so he does what he promised, and he goes home and pretty much renounces being a knight and chivalric activities. And this loss of identity really destroys him. He's physically been beaten up this whole book, but he's also just been mentally tormented this whole book. And when he loses to this fake knight, he kind of comes back to reality. And the heartbreak of that, he falls ill, he gets a severe fever, and then he dies. And that's it. And Sancho is heartbroken. Some of his maids are heartbroken. The people around him are heartbroken that he died. And it's like, y'all have been, except for Sancho, y'all have been so mean to him this whole book. And it is sad. He kind of like comes to his senses, and he's like, oh, I gotta die an honest Christian, so please send for a priest so I can repent and do all this, stuff I need to do before I die. And then he dies, and it's really sad. And I think the story as itself, at least the second part, is pretty good. I did enjoy it. However, at the end, there's more of that fourth wall breaking from the author, talking about the authenticity of it and the truth behind it, and just all this other stuff that I really feel like we could do without. I can handle just like a story on its own, and I don't need the fourth wall breaking or the author's commentary to try and further this satire. Without that, I think at least the second part really brought it back up for me. Like the first part, I was like, I don't think I can read another 500 pages of this. But the second part definitely is a lot more fluid and a lot more like, okay, there's actually a story, a novel going on. So that ends this book and thus this video. That's all I have for you right now. Overall, pretty good time. 2 5-star reads and then 1 maybe 3-star. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's it. I really hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about any of these books down below, or if you have a massive book that you really like, I'd love to hear recommendations down below. And yeah, subscribe to see more reading content. Check out my channel for previous reading videos that I've done. And thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!